So when families come to us, usually they don't have a lot of exposure to literacy, and they're coming to us because the grades aren't looking how they want them to look, or they see their child having challenges, but they can't quite put their finger on it, right? And they know that they're not making progress, but they don't quite know what to do. And so when families come to us, something we really pride ourselves on is parent partnership. And we spend a lot of time just forming really deep connections with our families. You know, it's obviously a boundaries issue, but I gotta stop giving away my personal cell phone to everybody. But, you know, I'm there for them and I talk through everything with them, and we're looking at the reports and we're, you know, going step by step together, right?
Hi, this is Jamal Watson. I am the author of The Student Debt Crisis, and you are listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
This episode of EdUp Accelerated Excellence is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15OFF. Check the show notes for more information or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
This episode is supported in part by Patriox Ultra High Oxygen Content Water. Drinking Patriox helps oxygenate the body, promoting overall health, energy, and vitality. In 2026, try Patriox on your journey for accelerated excellence. Receive a 10% discount on your next purchase with the code EDUPXE. That's 10% off with the code EDUPXE at patriox.us. Patriox.us. Find more details in the show notes. Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And I am your host, Jacob Easley II, PhD, PMP. And today's guest is the wonderful Anna Young. She is the founder of Sunnyside Literacy Lab, which aims to provide accessible and high-quality educational services directly to families. Anna, welcome to the show, and would you introduce yourself to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community by giving voice to your name as only you can, and give us an elevator pitch of what is the scope for Sunnyside Literacy Lab?
Hi, Dr. Easley. Thanks for having me. So I was an educator for 7 years. I served as a special education teacher, a humanities teacher, and a literacy interventionist. Now I serve as an adjunct instructor at CUNY Hunter College in the clinical program for our graduate students in the adolescent special education program. And I also am the founder of Sunnyside Literacy Lab. At Sunnyside Literacy Lab, based in Queens, New York, we provide high-quality, research-based small group literacy courses that provide a targeted intervention for literacy gaps. We also do intensive coaching on the science of reading for our teachers, and we engage in a lot of community outreach to get people to understand the significance of literacy in the moment that we're in now, and also as a lifelong pursuit.
So Anna, thank you so much for that. And we're going to get into it because we want to know a bit more about your work and the importance of literacy, and perhaps even some of the challenges that families might be facing regarding literacy. So what was your first memory of learning to read, and how has that shaped your experiences in the present date?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I think for any teacher, you really have to go back to childhood. I really had an interesting relationship with literacy from a really young age. My mom is pretty incredible. She grew up in a very difficult situation, and through educational opportunities was able to change her life trajectory and the life trajectory for the rest of our family, especially me as her daughter. So she was able to get her bachelor's and then her master's. She worked as an architect, as a professional woman in New York City, and was just really deeply ambitious and was also incredibly curious. And she always told me, education is for, yes, you're going to get skills to make a decent income, but it's really for your heart and your soul, right? And we continue to be educated for our whole lives. And so she would give me books like Charles Dickens, The Tale of Two Cities when I was in sixth grade. I still haven't read it, but
Wow.
She gave it to me. And she also invested every disposable dollar she had in my education. So, the first payment was for the mortgage and the second payment was for my schooling. And so really young, that was impressed upon me. On the other side, my father had a lot of struggles with literacy, and he struggled with reading and spelling. And so I would often help him, read through documents or help him, with spelling in an email or something. And he did some great things with me too from that perspective. One of the things he did with me was bring me to the library all the time. So he would go and sit in the magazine section and look through the magazines, and then I would be in the children's section. And it's so funny, like I don't know if this is like just a millennial thing, but at the library, they had this deal in the 90s where if you read 10 books, you got a discount to go to McDonald's. So I actually read the entire children's section when I was a little kid. And so I got all these like McDonald's coupons. And so whenever we went on a road trip, our whole family would get to go have like a Happy Meal or something.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
Yeah. So, it was very holistic in the way that, education was impressed on me. I also saw, though, that my dad's life trajectory was impacted from his lack of access to education and a lot of other things that were going on. So I saw, I was a witness as a very young child to what education as an opportunity could deliver in terms of further opportunities, and what the lack of access to education could also deny. And so when I went into teaching, that was very clear to me that there were different routes and the ways that the system could work for you and the ways that it could work against you.
So it warmed my heart when you said that your mother instilled in you this idea that education is for the heart and the soul. So I really appreciate that. And I think I'm going to take that with me, because I think that's a special nugget and a really good way of thinking about education to motivate someone. So Anna, you're certified in the Orton-Gillingham method of reading instruction. Can you share why the certification is important to you and describe this Orton-Gillingham method for those who might not be familiar?
Oh, yeah. The certification for me was life-changing. I feel like I got my master's before the science of reading really came into the picture. And so when I was in the classroom and I worked with 8th graders, I was just so frustrated because I was working so hard. And our goal is always to support students to reach grade level standards. And so I was teaching To Kill a Mockingbird or Toni Morrison to kids who did not have phonics skills. And I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so I was doing all the things in my teacher toolkit, right? Pre-annotated passages, previewing the text, summarizing, all of these things. And it wasn't really getting us anywhere, because we were doing everything around reading, but we weren't teaching reading. And so someone was kind of like, hey, you should really check out Orton Gillingham. And so over one winter break, I paid for it myself. I did the intensive, and it just really changed my entire professional trajectory. I'd been teaching for 7 years, and it was like a light bulb went off, like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing the entire time. And so when I came back to the classroom that January, I started teaching phonics out of my preps, which sounds like really crazy. But once you see kids, start learn how to read, it's just this thrill. It's so energizing and motivating. And I was getting to see kids just in front of me in live time change their entire self-perception, right? They had thought of themselves as a certain way, I can't read, I can't do this for so long because they hadn't been provided the direct instruction. And now they were getting it, and it was fun. It doesn't matter how old you are. Everyone likes sand and shaving cream and all that stuff, which is part of Orton Gillingham, is the multisensory aspect. And so I was seeing kids have fun with reading and be on time, motivated, because they could tell, I'm learning how to read here. And that for me was a second life as an educator. And that's the life that I'm currently in now. And so for anybody who's wondering, should I get certification? I would say it depends on where you are. Times are a little different than, they were, even just a few years ago, right, with the rollout of science of reading. But if you're in the situation that I was, where you're teaching adolescents, in middle school and high school, and you're not being offered that opportunity to get that foundational training, I would definitely pursue it, because it's going to change your entire teaching practice, and it's going to change the way that you connect with kids.
So you talked about a multi-sensory approach.
Yeah.
Can you paint a picture of just doing your certification? What would have been one activity that sort of encapsulates the heart and soul of the Orton Gillingham method?
I think the heart and soul of Orton Gillingham is really the 3-part drill at the beginning. So that's when you're reviewing all of the sounds that you have already gone over before. So it's a review drill. And so you will start off by taking your cards. They each have, a single phonics concept. And, you're reviewing them and saying, CH says ch, right, with the student. And then the next time you're holding it back and you're saying, show me in the sand, what says ch, right? And then they're putting it in the sand. And then the last step is that you have the cards and you put them out on the board, and you'll do 3 cards in a row, and then you'll kind of rotate them. So what this last task is blending, right? But the blends are kind of all nonsense words. You'll take a card out, put another card in. And so they're really having to focus on the sound and not rely on their, sight word recognition in order to decode the word.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And it sounds like some of the practices we used when I was teaching foreign language in the elementary schools or FLES programs, where we would use total physical response, multisensory, and really early on, soft approach to phonetic, or sort of looking at the word bases and and sound recognition with letters. So yeah, that's really cool. I like that. So can you share the origins of the Sunnyside Literacy Lab, and how did it come to be? In particular, I'm wondering, so who were your supporters and perhaps who were your detractors? Because we like to keep things realistic here on the show, and we know that particularly for startup, things aren't always pretty. And how did you navigate the feedback that you got from these perhaps 2 different audiences?
Yeah, I'll break that up. And if I don't get to the second part, just remind me. So I'll start with the origin story. And it all starts at Hunter College Learning Lab, where I now serve as an adjunct. And there's a program where you work one-on-one with a student for a year. You are placed with them, they have a learning disability, and you do the assessments, you create an intervention plan, and then you provide services, and you're doing progress monitoring, all under the supervision of a professor. And so I was matched with a student, and he was not really interested in reading. He had co-occurring diagnoses of dyslexia, dysgraphia, and ADHD. So he didn't have a great relationship with text. And it's so wacky. Whenever I tell anyone the origin story, I'm like, it's a very silly story. But but one of his special interests was aliens. So he was really into aliens. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? So I started finding these articles online, like CNN.com, does Area 52 exist? And we would read that text, and we would do, annotation, Cornell notes, outlining strategy. We would take vocabulary and do morphological analysis, like extraterrestrial, like what does terra mean? It means Earth, right? And doing that type of analysis for words that were showing up in these really kind of quirky texts. And what that did was, because I kind of gave him that, was it earned me a lot of trust. So then when I was like, hey, we've got to move on from aliens, he was like, okay, I trust you, like, let's try a book. And he ended up reading about 10 independent novels at home, outside of our sessions. And by the end of the year, this kid who never thought that they were a reader was on grade level, and he came in below. So it was really an amazing experience. And so that inspired our first courses, which were all interest-based reading comprehension courses for adolescents. So in our sports fiction class, we were reading really great books like Mike Lupica, all the baseball books, and The Crossover by Kwame Alexander. And so kids were able to choose courses that really aligned with their interests while also doing all the great reading strategy work. From there, obviously, our programs expanded to include courses that target every strand of the reading rope, which is where we're at right now. In terms of how it started, I mean, when you have an origin story like that and you tell people, you're like, yeah, so I had this student who was really into aliens, and I'm going to make this whole company, and I'm going to quit my job. They're like, okay, tell us how that works out, but my main supporter was my co-teacher at the time, because we worked with each other and he saw everything that I was learning and we were implementing into the classroom and it was working. So he was a really big supporter of me. Nowadays, I pretty much only have supporters. I think the detractors are, unfortunately, the funders. So when I'm applying for a grant, in the social enterprise space, and people aren't aware of the literacy crisis, they might say something like, well, don't the schools teach the kids how to read? This seems unnecessary, or this seems not worthy of investment. So sometimes when I'm entering spaces where people don't have an awareness of the context of education in our country, then I get a lot of cynicism about the necessity. But so far, I feel like we're doing good work and people appreciate it.
So we appreciate it, and thank you for that. So tell us about, you started talking about programming, but who are the current communities you serve, for example? And you mentioned you started off with interest stories and now you have expanded. So if you could just give us an overview of, for families that might be listening, what is the scope of the programming and what communities are you only serving folks in Queens, so on and so forth?
Yeah, we're really proud of the communities that we serve. We basically are offering services that if you were in Manhattan, they would cost $200, $250 an hour for this type of highly specialized service. Because we use a group model and because we're not profit driven, we've been able to really decrease that cost. So it's a lot more accessible while still maintaining the quality. Our families are, for winter enrollment, are 95% people of color. 32% of our students have IEPs or 504s. 32% are bilingual, and 42% are adolescents. In terms of where students are coming from, we're based in Queens, but we have kids all over the city. We have a family that's joining us from the South Bronx. We have people from Canarsie, from Sunset Park, from St. Albans. So we're really creating a little hub in Sunnyside, which I never expected. I thought it was going to be people, who are down the street, and people are driving, an hour in traffic to get to us.
So, that's an interesting phenomena that most people aren't fully recognized at home. You see artists that when they go abroad, they're a very big star somewhere else. And here they may have had an album and a few people have heard of it.
Yeah.
So, but don't worry, it will come.
Thank you.
So when meeting with families for the first time, what are the top concerns that they express regarding literacy development?
So when families come to us, usually they don't have a lot of exposure to literacy, and they're coming to us because the grades aren't looking how they want them to look, or they see their child having challenges, but they can't quite put their finger on it, right? And they know that they're not making progress, but they don't quite know what to do. And so when families come to us, something we really pride ourselves on is parent partnership. And we spend a lot of time just forming really deep connections with our families. It's obviously a boundaries issue, but I gotta stop giving away my personal cell phone to everybody. But, I'm there for them, and I talk through everything with them, and we're looking at the reports, and we're, going step by step together, right? So when a student comes to us, they start with an IXL assessment. These days, a lot of students are doing iReady, they're doing IXL, but there's still schools where there's no assessment taking place. So they're just getting kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 on the report card. And for those parents, it's really an illuminating experience to see, okay, this is exactly what my child's grade level, reading level is. And these are the specific domains that they need support with, right? Do they need support with reading comprehension? Do they need support with writing? Do they need support with decoding, right? So that report has been a game changer for us, and, rolling that out with every new family that comes, because then we actually can give them the exact targeted support that they need. Through the report as the first step, we can start talking about literacy, right? Because we can start having the conversations that it's not that they need more test prep. It's not that they need more to try harder, right? It's that there's actually a gap, and this is how we're going to close the gap. And I think for so many people, there's, like I've talked about, light bulb moments where it's like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. Then we're able to show them the reading rope graphic. Then we're able to talk about having a consistent reading schedule at home. Sometimes I'll even throw in chores, that the number one predictor of academic outcomes is whether or not they do chores, right? So we really emphasize nightly reading and chores, and that also takes a lot of comfort with me, right? To be able to have those types of conversations that I think in another setting, people might find invasive. But in this setting, we're able to be a little bit more relaxed and meet each other as human beings and professionals rather than within an institution. So the environment that we're in allows us to have those conversations. And then we're kind of over the course of their time with us, slowly giving them more and more, right? So if a child comes to us with phonics, we'll start with teaching the parent about decodable readers. That's very easy to understand. Take this decodable reader that we practiced, and now I need you to practice it at home. And then maybe 5 weeks later, I'll start talking about phonological awareness, right? And they're slowly increasing their knowledge to the point that by the end, they're literacy experts themselves.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUPXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
This episode is supported in part by Patriox, ultra high oxygen content water. Drinking Patriox helps oxygenate the body, promoting overall health, energy, and vitality. In 2026, try Patriox on your journey for accelerated excellence. Receive a 10% discount on your next purchase with the code EDUPXE. That's 10% off with the code EDUPXE at patriox.us. Patriox.us. Find more details in the show notes. What would you report that families are saying after, from that initial visit and now fast forward 6 months or a year in?
I think they just are more at peace. I think that there's two things that have to happen. The first is that there's a recognition that everything's going to be okay. And the second is that the road to recovery is not forever, but it is a journey, right? Especially for our adolescent learners. And so understanding it's not going to get fixed in a weekend, it's not going to get fixed in 3 months. If the child is reading perhaps 5 years below grade level, this is going to be a journey and we're on that journey together, and that's okay. This is just the daily work that has to take place. And if you have a faith in the process, then things are going to improve over time. And because now the types of strategies that we're using are based in research as opposed to what, I may have been doing in my classroom 6 years ago, right? Then I can really say that with confidence that if you stick with this work, it will pay dividends, in a lot of different ways, not just their reading, not just their grades, but also their self-confidence. And you're going to see a change in how they interact with the world because they know that they can do anything and they've done some really hard work. I want to talk a little bit about some success stories. We have had so many, but I was really thinking about two main kids who I absolutely adore. They're both young men, both adolescents. And the first student came to us. He has a diagnosis of autism, and we know that there's a connection between autism and reading comprehension. And his decoding was on grade level, but his comprehension was below grade level. And we put him into the reading comp courses, which really focus on language structures, vocabulary, summarizing, all of that work, inferences, making predictions. And a year later, he went from being below grade level to being 2 years above grade level, which is also a testament to that young man. And we were able to find him books that really played into his interests. So another part of our program is we send every kid home with 3 high interest books with the message that these should be read, at their own pace. But he was reading those books. And we know that reading makes you a better reader, just like running makes you a better runner, right? And so it's amazing to see this kid who thought of themselves one way, and then within a year's time, he was on National Honor Society, right? And our second student we're still really working with him. He came to this country a few years ago during COVID, and he was coming from a really rural area. So he has, I don't make any diagnoses, but we know some type of undiagnosed learning difference. And so when he came to us, he was in 7th grade, and the young man did not know his letter sounds. So we had to really start with A says ah with him and doing, CVC words. And within, 6 months, we did a lot of work in Gillingham with him, but now we've moved on and he's doing morphology. And so he was reading words like prescription and detracted, which is incredible. It's so fast. And now we're, continuing the work. And for him, it's going to be a different journey, but I think this student in particular reminds me of the significance of this work, because I can say pretty much for certain that he would not have learned to read if we didn't exist. And his life is different because of Sunnyside Literacy Lab and because of this work here. So, we tell him all the time, we're so proud of him, and he's going to be able to do amazing things, not just because now he has basic literacy, but also because he sees himself as a learner, which is it's like a earth-shaking identity,
Yeah, I think that this is important work, clearly, and these are tremendous examples of success, and it really does harken back to your mom's words about heart and soul. So once you internalize that, seeing yourself as a learner, it can be tremendous, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Not only for him, but also for the family. And I can see your face lights up when you talk about that when you tell that story.
I think the family work is the most interesting, and I'm definitely not, a therapist or a counselor, but we've seen families come, and we all know how families are with teenagers, but having literacy as kind of a mission of the family has been a really unifying factor in terms of this is something we are all working towards, and the educators are on board, the child is on board, the parent is on board, and we're all together on this mission. And that has been something really beautiful to see, is this type of unity in families that, they may have come in with like, I need you to study more, or I need this, right? Which is, it's important to reinforce those expectations, but now they really have a direction, and it's a positive direction.
So Anna, in a recent article by EdTrust, the author asserts, there's overwhelming evidence that nearly all children can learn to read, but in schools across the country, many students, especially students of color, students from low-income backgrounds, multilingual learners, and students with disabilities are not yet skillful readers. And we know that pass rate for 4th graders on the National Assessment for Educational Progress, most recent report card, we did not reach the 50% mark of students reading at or above proficiency levels. So, and as a result, we know that students of color, multilingual, and students with disabilities, their results were even worse. How would you respond to this statement and the report?
I would respond with gratitude to the people who wrote that report for continuing to do the courageous work of sounding the alarm on literacy. I think this is an issue that every single teacher is raising their voice on, but we need national leaders to say that this is important. And this is a question of our nation's future, not just, something like sweet about elementary school kids, right? Because children who don't learn to read, as I know, become adults who don't know how to read, right? And so this is, I think, the issue of our time. And as some people have said, it's the most solvable issue of our time. It's something that we take really seriously at Sunnyside Literacy Lab. While we are a private practice and we do have tuition, so that shapes our student population, even though we serve a diverse student population, it's still not the full spectrum of learners in Queens or New York City. we think about our investment as being a little more holistic than that. So, for example, we prioritize hiring educators of color, specifically special education teachers who work in Title I schools. We know that in New York City, that 42% of teachers will leave before even getting to their fourth year. And the retention is even lower for special education teachers. It's even lower for teachers of color. So if we're going to change that data for literacy and what the outcomes are for kids, I believe strongly that we need to invest in the adults. And so at Sunnyside Literacy Lab, that looks like prioritizing our hiring for teachers who are in the highest need schools. And so all of the coaching that they receive, all the feedback they receive, all of the professional development that they receive is going to be brought back to their school sites where they're serving hundreds of students a day. And so as much as I'm invested with the students and the families, one of my biggest concerns is really the adults that work with us and providing an atmosphere where they are cared for, where they're invested in. We also do life coaching and career coaching so they can see themselves as leaders and not leave the profession, because it's so important that they stay and that we all continue to do this hard work together.
And Anna, what have you learned about community advocacy through your startup?
I've learned that people need to see it to believe it. And, you know, when I talk about literacy, it's kind of this vague issue, you know, and people will sometimes use language like, yeah, you know, I wasn't great in reading myself. And reading is also oftentimes a topic that people feel a lot of shame around. You know, math, I think, is a little different culturally, but people feel a lot of shame around struggling as a reader. And so it can be hard to move past that shame into action. I think that a cure to that is hope. And we've seen that our families, that their students make incredible gains through the targeted instruction, become the biggest champions for literacy. They're the ones talking to their neighbors about it. They're talking about it at their place of worship. They're coming to our community events. They're, you know, getting the word out. They're like, let me talk to my PTA about this, right? They're bringing in their cousins and their, you know, nieces and nephews to get services and figuring out how to support the entire family to move forward with literacy. And so I really believe strongly that if we're going to make moves, we need to start with direct impact, right? And changing people's lives and then letting them be the spokespeople, letting them be the agents of change, because I'm just one person, you know, but our families are able to impact hundreds of people on their own.
And so, Anna, thank you so much for that. I mean, this really is important work. And I really value the idea and appreciate the idea of community engagement in this effort, because it really is about creating an ecosystem of support for each individual student. And we know that outside of the school, most of the time is spent within familial groups. So it's important that when students leave the lab or their school, that they have that connected tissue, so to speak, to support them in growing their muscles for literacy and for reading. So what's next for you as an entrepreneur or for Sunnyside Literacy Lab, and how might the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community engage with that work?
Well, we kind of never know what's next for us in this life, but we are in the very early stages of moving our locations to a space. I can't speak about it fully, but it'll be a really fully integrated community model that I'm so excited for. I think it's going to be the ultimate vision of what it looks to have community-based education. We are also in the process of forming a 501c3 so we can provide services for students free of charge, ideally through referrals from their schools. And I think for me, something that has come out of this process is entrepreneurship as personal development and personal transformation. You know, when everything's on you, you got to figure out how to deal with the pressure, because there's no giving up, you know? And for me, that leadership development has probably been the greatest gift I've received from this journey. And I really am curious about what it'll look like to continue to develop other teachers, other people who are really at the ground level, whether they're nurses and social workers, into leadership positions.
So Anna Young of Sunnyside Literacy Lab, I want to thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence as we seek to advance educational excellence and equity.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, YouTube, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.
A special thanks to our research assistant, Emma Worthington, a PhD student of Fordham University's School Psychology program. And we want to hear from you if you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest. Contact us online at edupxe.com. That's edupxe.com.